You were not born overstimulated. You were not born unable to sit still with your own thoughts. You were conditioned, quietly, repeatedly, and early. The dopamine child is formed the first time discomfort is avoided instead of endured. Not through some dramatic collapse, not through a single traumatic event, but through convenience, through repetition, through relief delivered too quickly. A tablet placed in your hands when you were restless. Cartoons when you were lonely. Snacks when you were sad. Video games when reality felt dull. Distraction became the medicine, and your nervous system absorbed a silent law. Discomfort should be interrupted immediately. A child does not interpret pain philosophically. He experiences it physically. Boredom feels like suffocation. Rejection feels like erasure. Silence feels threatening. And without initiation, without a father teaching endurance or a mother guiding emotional regulation, he reaches outward for relief. Modern childhood provides endless relief, endless novelty, endless stimulation, bright colors, fast cuts, infinite scrolling. You were not taught to metabolize discomfort. You were taught to override it. The brain is plastic. It wires around what works. Every time discomfort was interrupted with stimulation, the pathway strengthened. Dopamine surged. Relief arrived. The nervous system learned the sequence. Tension to stimulus to reward. Repeat that sequence enough times and it becomes identity. You begin to associate regulation not with resilience, but with consumption. Understand what that does structurally. When reward is frequent and effortless, the brain adapts upward. Baseline satisfaction lowers. Ordinary reality begins to feel flat. Slow processes feel intolerable. Depth feels exhausting. The child who is constantly entertained never develops internal generation. He waits for stimulation to animate him. He becomes passive in his own nervous system. This is not about morality. It is about wiring. If you were never required to sit with boredom, you never built the capacity for stillness. If you were never required to endure frustration, you never built tolerance for delayed gratification. If silence was always filled with noise, your mind never learned to stand alone. So when discomfort rises, even mildly, the system searches automatically for escape. Then puberty arrives. Sexual energy enters a brain already conditioned for intensity. This is where the shift becomes dangerous, because sexual arousal is one of the most powerful dopamine spikes available to a human being. And if your nervous system has already been trained to seek spikes as relief, sexuality will not attach to purpose. It will attach to stimulation. Before you ever experienced real intimacy, you experienced fantasy. Before eye contact, you experienced pixels. Before emotional bonding, you experienced novelty on demand. The sexual template did not develop around connection, it developed around access. This is how the dopamine child matures into the dopamine adult. Sexual desire becomes fused with escape. Stress triggers arousal. Loneliness triggers fantasy. Insecurity triggers consumption. The nervous system does not differentiate between emotional pain and sexual craving. It treats both as tension requiring discharge, and discharge feels like control. But it is not control. It is regulation through intensity. Over time, baseline arousal shifts. Real interactions feel slower. Subtlety feels boring. Depth feels muted compared to hyper-curated stimulation. The brain, conditioned on escalation, begins to demand novelty to feel alive. And because this wiring began early, it feels natural. It feels like personality. It feels like preference. But it is conditioning layered over biology. The tragedy is not that you sought pleasure. The tragedy is that you were never initiated into endurance. Real development requires friction. It requires boredom. It requires silence without panic. It requires sitting in a room without reaching for a device just to escape your own internal tension. But modern environments eliminated friction and replaced it with convenience. You were pacified instead of forged. And pacified boys become restless men. The dopamine child cannot tolerate stillness because stillness exposes unresolved emotion. He hunts for spikes not because he is passionate, but because he is dysregulated. He believes he is choosing pleasure. In reality, he is fleeing discomfort programmed years earlier. This is why discipline feels violent at first. You are not just breaking a habit. You are challenging early neural architecture. You are telling a nervous system trained on immediacy that it must now endure delay. You are telling a brain addicted to novelty that it must rediscover depth. The resistance you feel is not weakness. It is withdrawal from conditioning. The birth of the dopamine child was incremental, invisible, repeated, but its consequences are structural: fractured attention, impatience, chronic restlessness, desire tethered to fantasy rather than presence. Lust is not the origin. The origin is a nervous system that learned too early that relief should be instant and discomfort should be escaped. Until you see that clearly, until you recognize that your adult struggles with desire are extensions of early escapism, you will keep fighting symptoms instead of the source. The dopamine child was not evil. He was surviving. But survival strategies do not automatically dissolve when you grow older. If you do not confront him, he will govern your attention, your sexuality, and your direction, and he will do so quietly, under the illusion that this is simply who you are. Puberty did not corrupt you. It amplified what was already wired. By the time sexual energy awakened in your body, the architecture of your nervous system was already shaped. You had already learned that discomfort should be interrupted. You had already learned that relief could be summoned instantly. You had already built pathways that associated stimulation with safety. So when libido arrived, raw, electric, biological, it did not enter a disciplined system. It entered a system trained to escape. This is where desire becomes hijacked. Sexual arousal is one of the most powerful dopamine spikes available to a human being. It is nature's incentive for bonding and reproduction. But in a brain conditioned by early escapism, arousal becomes something else. It becomes anesthesia. It becomes mood regulation. It becomes the fastest exit from boredom, loneliness, stress, and insecurity. The dopamine child does not disappear when you turn 18. He simply gains access to stronger chemicals. Notice the pattern. You feel restless. You reach for stimulation. You feel stressed. You fantasize. You feel rejected. You seek validation through attention, imagery, or conquest. The behavior looks sexual on the surface, but beneath it is the same mechanism that soothed you as a child. Tension arises. Relief must follow, immediately. The tragedy is subtle, because the culture reinforces it. Hypersexualized media, infinite novelty, endless bodies presented as consumable options. The nervous system adapts quickly. What once felt intense becomes baseline. What once felt exciting becomes ordinary. Escalation begins. More novelty, more extremes, faster access, shorter cycles, and slowly, desire detaches from connection. Real intimacy is slow. It requires patience. It requires presence. It requires emotional exposure. But the brain conditioned for spikes does not tolerate slowness well. It interprets steadiness as boredom. It interprets subtlety as lack, so it seeks intensity instead. This is how fragmentation begins. Attention fractures across endless options. Attraction becomes shallow but urgent. The mind scrolls even when the body is still. You may be sitting next to a real woman, but your nervous system is calibrated to novelty beyond her. Not because she is lacking, but because your baseline was raised artificially for years. Understand the structural shift. Sexuality, which was meant to bond and deepen, becomes consumption. The dopamine adult does not pursue intimacy. He pursues stimulation. He confuses arousal with meaning. He confuses access with power. He believes he is expressing desire, but in reality, he is regulating mood. His libido is not aligned with purpose. It is aligned with relief. Over time, consequences surface. Desensitization, erectile dysfunction at younger ages, difficulty maintaining arousal without novelty, emotional detachment during intimacy, chronic dissatisfaction even after climax. The spike comes, but the baseline drops lower afterward. And because the nervous system fears that drop, it seeks the next spike even faster. This is not a moral failure, it is neuroadaptation. The brain adjusts to what it repeatedly experiences. If arousal is consistently paired with artificial novelty, it will struggle to respond to ordinary reality. If sexual release becomes the primary method of stress relief, the system will default to it whenever pressure builds. And adult life is pressure, responsibility, repetition, obligation. So the pattern tightens: stress at work, sexual stimulation, relationship conflict, fantasy, loneliness, consumption. The cycle is efficient, predictable, private. And because it provides temporary relief, it feels justified. But look deeper. Every time desire is used to escape discomfort, the original wiring strengthens. The dopamine child remains in control, now operating through adult sexuality. He whispers that this is natural, that men are simply wired this way, that intensity equals vitality. But intensity is not vitality, it is reactivity. True sexual power requires containment, direction, choice. The hijacked system has none of these. It reacts automatically. It escalates reflexively. It consumes without integration. And because it never learned to sit with emotional tension without discharge, it cannot distinguish between genuine attraction and psychological avoidance. This is the psychological split. On the surface, you believe you are choosing. Beneath the surface, your nervous system is executing an old program. Relieve tension immediately. Sexuality becomes the most efficient tool available. The body feels alive in those moments, but afterward, there is often emptiness. Not because sex is wrong, but because it was used as escape, not connection. The dopamine child sought stimulation to avoid boredom. The dopamine adult seeks stimulation to avoid responsibility, loneliness, and self-confrontation. The mechanism is identical, only the stakes are higher. And if this fusion of escapism and sexuality is never examined, desire will never feel stable. It will always chase novelty, always escalate, always hunger. Not because you are excessively lustful, but because your baseline was shaped by avoidance. Until that wiring is challenged, sexuality will not serve your mission. It will quietly replace it. You do not outgrow the dopamine child. You confront him. By now you understand the structure. Early escapism shaped the nervous system. Puberty fused that wiring with sexual energy. Desire became regulation. Arousal became anesthesia, and the cycle reinforced itself for years under the illusion of normality. But conditioning is not destiny. Wiring can be rewritten. The nervous system is plastic, but only under pressure. The first step is recognition without sentimentality. When sexual desire arises, pause. Do not suppress it. Observe it. Ask one ruthless question. Is this attraction, or is this tension seeking discharge? You will begin to notice patterns. Desire appears when you are bored, when you are stressed, when you feel unseen, when you avoid responsibility. The spike promises relief. It always does. But relief is not the same as resolution. If you respond automatically, the pathway strengthens. If you interrupt the pattern, even briefly, the pathway weakens. This is the beginning of reversal, not through shame, not through repression, through conscious interruption. The dopamine child survives on immediacy, so you attack immediacy. Delay the response. 10 minutes, 20, an hour. Allow the tension to exist without escape. Your nervous system will resist. It will agitate. It will whisper that you are denying yourself something natural. That discomfort is unnecessary, but that agitation is withdrawal from conditioning. That restlessness is the system recalibrating. You must learn to sit in it. Boredom is not emptiness. It is detox. Silence is not lack. It is restoration. When you remove constant stimulation, limit novelty, reduce artificial arousal, step away from endless scrolling, the baseline drops. At first, everything feels dull, flat, colorless. That is not life-losing intensity. That is your nervous system descending from an artificial high. Most men quit here. They mistake recalibration for loss of vitality. But if you endure long enough, something shifts. Subtlety returns. Ordinary interaction begins to feel alive again. Eye contact carries weight. Touch carries electricity. Depth replaces novelty. The brain, no longer flooded with artificial spikes, becomes sensitive to real stimulus. This is rewiring. At the same time, sexual energy must be redirected, not suppressed. Suppression breeds tension. Redirection builds power. When arousal rises, move your body. Train, build, create. Channel that voltage into something structured. The same dopamine that once fueled consumption can fuel production. The difference is effort. Effort reclaims sovereignty. The dopamine child wants comfort. The disciplined adult wants capacity. Every time you choose effort over escape, you shift identity. You are no longer reacting to tension, you are converting it. But the deeper work is emotional. Sexual escapism often masks unresolved loneliness, insecurity, and avoidance. When you remove the escape, those emotions surface. This is the confrontation you were never initiated into as a child. Sit with them, journal them, speak them if necessary, but do not anesthetize them. The goal is not celibacy for its own sake. The goal is alignment. Sexual desire should enhance connection, not replace it. It should bond you to reality, not detach you from it. It should serve your mission, not sabotage it. When your nervous system is no longer dependent on spikes, attraction becomes clearer. You pursue deliberately. You bond intentionally. You choose rather than react. That is sovereignty. Reversal is not dramatic. It is incremental, just like the conditioning was. Small interruptions, repeated endurance, gradual recalibration. Over time, the dopamine child loses dominance. Not because he was destroyed, but because he was integrated. He no longer governs your impulses. He no longer dictates your attention. He no longer fuses tension with automatic discharge. Instead, desire becomes contained energy, directed, powerful, voluntary. Understand this clearly. You are not trying to kill sexuality. You are trying to purify its foundation. When desire is no longer tied to avoidance, it becomes strength. It becomes presence. It becomes intensity without addiction. The child sought relief. The disciplined man seeks mastery. And mastery begins the moment you choose to endure what you once escaped. Thus remember, we are in Deceptor. You're not lazy, you're hijacked. Every scroll designed to keep you docile, addicted, and distracted. Dopamine warfare, reclaiming the mind. This isn't just about quitting porn or deleting apps. This is about taking back command of your nervous system, your focus, your fire. The Crusaders Bundle. 4 ruthless lessons. 1 unbreakable code. For a limited time, claim all 4 in Deceptor audiobooks for the price of 3. Step inside the private archive of discipline, power, and psychological warfare. Where lust is conquered, the mind is weaponized, and legacy is forged. Don't just listen. Arm yourself. indeceptions.com